making the effort to be here in person. I'm delighted to welcome Mike. Mike is the organizer of one of the biggest Joomla days in the US, Joomla Day Milwaukee. And he also has one of the biggest titles of his presentation, everything he wanted to know about Joomla 3, but were afraid to ask. Mike's presentation is Mike reminds me that he's the organizer of Joomla Day Minnesota, not Minneapolis, which probably makes a big difference only to people in a small area in the Midwest, I believe. Sorry, Mike. So welcome, Mike. Welcome to all the attendees. Glad to have you guys here. And I'm going to hand over the reins to Mike, who's about to start the presentation.
Thanks, Steve, for the very nice introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Mike Demopoulos. I am the co-organizer for Joomla Day Minnesota, one of the largest Joomla events in the United States. We're planning to do it again next year at Mall of America, and we hope to see you all there. You can go to joomladay.mn if you're interested to learn more about that. But my talk today is everything you wanted to know about Joomla, but we're afraid of. Now, certain people at a certain generational age might recognize the book that this was encouraged from. But basically, the point of this presentation is to ask questions, share insights, and to kind of talk about different ideas or concepts and things that you've always wanted to know about Joomla, but you might not have wanted to ask, you might have been embarrassed to ask at other Joomla events, or you just are curious about. There is a little bit of prepared content, but again, at the end, I'll be looking into the questions area, and hopefully you guys will have lots of questions, and we can fill the rest of our time answering the stuff that you want to know about, not just a little bit that I have prepared in advance. I gave this talk 2 other times, one at Joomla Day Chicago, and the other time at Joomla Day Minnesota. So, if you do want to be tweeting
Muted
or are encouraged throughout the time, my handle is @mpmike. If you want to tweet at me or tweet that you're listening to this, that does stand for Mouse Planet Mike. I have done a Disney podcast as well in a past life. So, without further ado, this is everything you wanted to know about Joomla, but we're afraid to ask. The first thing that I kind of want to talk about is you sometimes don't need me. And what I mean by that is I'm a developer, and I work for a great company in Minnesota called SPC, and we specialize in security-conscious companies. And what I do the majority of my time is I build websites for financial institutions, banks and credit unions, of the like. And I talk to lots of clients, especially clients when I used to be doing freelance work on my own before I joined the team at SPC, that were sick of their old web developers nickel and diming them for simple changes, like adding photos and content and text and things along those lines. If your web developer doesn't allow you to make the changes on your website, you really shouldn't be using a content management system, let alone Joomla. Joomla really is pretty user-friendly for the majority of the work any user needs to do. They just need to have that little bit of hand-holding to know how to take it the 10th degree. Now, I'm not saying that someone that's never touched a CMS before or Joomla before can build their own components overnight. But if you want to do basic content management, Joomla really is, in my opinion, the best platform to do that on. It is very user-friendly to use, and your web developer, in my opinion, should give you training. They might charge you for it, it depends on your contract, on how to maintain and edit the basic functions of your website. For a lot of our clients, that could be things like editing the promotional page on their site, or editing the rates for the mortgage rates or things like that. But for the majority of what you need to do on your website, you should be able to do it yourself if you're so inclined. Now, we certainly have clients that would like us to do all the maintenance for them, and we're more than happy to do that for them. However, we don't want anyone to feel like they're locked into only coming to us when they're doing simple content changes on their website. Now, if you're not sure how to do any of these changes yourself, I do recommend a few training resources. The first one I recommend, and it seems obvious with today's talk, but by far one of the best online Joomla training resources that I've found. In fact, SPC has a license with OS Training to embed one of their extensions called OS Toolbar, so that we have just a sliver of those great training videos for basic things like how to add articles, things like that, in the back end of every one of our clients' websites. And that alone has been a huge value add that we've offered to our clients, and our clients really appreciate the fact that they click a little button in the back end of Joomla and watch a quick little video on how to do the basic things. But of course, the main website for OS Training has tons more information, and I highly recommend it. I also recommend the whole series of Joomla Press books. The most recent one is obviously Steve's book, Joomla 3 Explained, Your Step-by-Step Guide. If I messed up that title, I apologize. But the whole Joomla Press series are excellent books. They have an excellent templating book, an excellent programming book. I do recommend all the Joomla Press books, plus your purchase does help benefit the Joomla project, which is not for profit. Because this is open source software, it's all free, it's good to give a little back if you can. Next, I want to talk a little bit about hosting. Now, we all know about those companies out there that can offer $1 hosting for 6 years, or similar offers out there. Hosting matters. If you have a great site but a crappy host, you're not going to have a great site experience, or you're not going to have a host that's there when you need them. Now, it does not mean you need the most expensive hosting out there. I've had clients in the past who have had just a brochure website of 20 pages, and they get maybe, I don't know, a few thousand visitors a month, and they were sold a $1,000 a month, dedicated server somewhere. That's overkill for what their site is. But on the flip side, if you're an e-commerce site or accept credit cards, you do want to make sure you have a host that's secure and meets the standards and demand that you would like to go with. I recommend a Joomla-centric web host. There's a lot out there. You can go on Joomla's website for ones that they have officially aligned with for different partnerships and things. But if you're just starting and not sure where to go, I use Cloud Access for all my personal projects, and we actually use Cloud Access with SPC for a handful of non-financial websites. Cloud Access is a great host. They have great phone support, and what's even best about them is they currently operate the Joomla demo site. So if you just play around with Joomla, you can launch as many demos of Joomla as you'd like, no credit card needed, and you can just play around with it, get your feet wet, see what's different between 2, 5, and 3. Although if you're doing a new site, you should definitely be in the 3 series, and kind of play around with that. In addition to hosting, you want to look at features such as what do they have for backup options. Do they do backups? Are backups extra? How long do they keep those backups for? You also want to look at a host that has some sort of staging environment set up. I know Cloud Access has a way that you can replicate your live site to a staging environment, work on the staging environment, which we'll talk about a little bit in just a second, and then when you're ready, you can commit that back to live so that you're not doing live changes on staging. And then some hosts also offer advanced features such as malware and firewalls, things like that. So just do your research, see what fits best for you. US-based hosts might not be the best solution if you're in Europe. Consequently, an Indian or Europe-based host might not be the best solution if you're in the United States. And really, it just has to be a good fit. Some people really like ticketed support. Some people prefer phone support. It just depends what works best for you. But look at the Joomla-centric hosts, such as Rockin', Cloud Access, Media Temple, and the list goes on. And there's no shortage of hosts out there. But you do want to make sure you choose a good host. I will do a special note to GoDaddy Hosting. GoDaddy Hosting has done changes recently on their whole global network that have made some popular Joomla extensions, such as the Kiva Backup, no longer work on some of those hosts, and that's been a global change. So you do want to keep that in mind, that price might not be your only determining factor. A new site alone will not help your SEO. I know that could seem opposite from what a lot of people have told you, but having a new site alone and not doing anything else on your website, you're not going to suddenly get thousands and thousands of visitors for traffic overnight. It just won't happen. SEO is part of a longer plan and thing you need to really keep in mind. But if you just have a brochure site, you're not interested in maybe a full SEO plan or SEO partner to help you navigate those waters, what you need to remember, though, is that you want to have fresh content on your website. That could be as simple as having a blog and just updating that blog once a week. But just having a brand new website, throwing it out there, it's not going to make the phone ring on its own. A website is one piece of a marketing puzzle, and you want to make sure that you treat it with the attention that any other piece of marketing or your business deserves. Because a new site might be pretty, but if it's not making your phone ring or your client's phone ring, it doesn't really fulfill the need. Because most websites' goals are to somehow make money, increase sales, increase conversions, whatever the case may be. And if it's not doing that, then the site is really not doing its job, and you need a new website. It's not going to instantly fix that. That could definitely help. A new website is definitely a great tool, but if you don't, work on that site, give it new content, and kind of realign it based on whatever your goals are in your marketing plan, it's not going to by itself, be that miracle magic pill. Because as far as I know, there's no magic pill that will suddenly get you sales overnight. But a website is a good piece of that, but don't just think, get a new website, throw it up there, and not touch it for 4 years. It's going to fulfill all you need, because that's just not the truth. The way that we get started is to quit talking and begin doing. That is a quote by Walt Disney. As I mentioned earlier, I had a Disney podcast called Mouse Station on Mouse Planet. And Walt Disney was famous for stop talking about doing change and start doing it once in a while. You can talk until you're, blue in the face, but if you don't do any active changes or try something on your website, it's not gonna change. You're gonna be in the same thing again and again and again. Albert Einstein defined insanity doing the same thing again and again and expecting a different result. I think that's very applicable for anything to do with online marketing and your website design. Duke Spear, he's famous for the 3x3x3 rule whenever he does an opening talk at conferences. Basically, his thing is find 3 people to connect with that you're going to connect with later. Have 3 of your questions answered that you had before you went to your conference or event, such as Joomla 3-Day. And find 3 things that you're going to implement in the next 30 days or try. Because if you don't try any of these things and great ideas that you're hearing all day today from all the wonderful speakers and presenters in the Joomla community, all that great knowledge is going to go away, and a year is going to go by, and you'll be like, yeah, that Joomla 3-Day was really good, but I don't think I got anything out of it. Find 3 things to try and just write them down and commit to doing them, because it's great to listen and talk, but unless you do something, it's not going to really make a difference in your career and your marketing efforts. The next thing that I want to talk about is have a plan. Measure twice, cut once. I wrote have a plan in 4 different languages, or 5 different languages on here, and that goes back to your website part of a marketing plan. Have goals in mind. What do you want your website to do? What's the purpose of it? Is it just a blog to share family photos? Is it to be an informational site that people that already know about your business will visit? Or is it for people that don't know about your business or endeavor or organization, go to learn about and maybe hopefully take that next step to continue on maybe the sales process? Maybe that means requesting information, picking up the phone, signing up for a demo. But whatever it is, you have to have a plan, you have to have a goal in mind, and anything you do in relation to that plan, you want to take baby steps on. What I mean by that is I see so many clients, especially when I was freelancing, and they would say, oh, I want to have a website, and I want to have Twitter, I want to have Facebook, I want to have YouTube, I want to have LinkedIn, I want to do contests, I want to do this and that. And they have all these great things and ideas that they want to do, all these buzzwords in social networking or online marketing or whatever the case may be. But it would become so overwhelming that they'd be really active for like a month. And after that month, they would stop doing it because they're busy working in their business, because that's what they know. They know their business. So they fall back on what they're best at, which is working in their business, and they leave the website to the wayside. Well, all of a sudden you have no unique content, and you have social networks that haven't been updated for 2 years. We've all seen those sites out there, and you don't want to be that site. So what I suggest is have those plans and goals in mind. Take baby steps and readjust as necessary. If you need more assistance in this, there's great companies and people out there who specialize in online marketing and helping you make the most of your digital marketing presence. The next talk is from Daniel Metcalf from SBC, the company I work for. They'll talk more about that in some more specific detail. But take baby steps. If you want to have a blog, start with a blog. If you keep that blog up and you're not falling behind on it after 3 months, then maybe add in something else. And then maybe that's Twitter. And if that's going well for you, then maybe add in something else. And then just take those baby steps and, measure. Measure the results that you get. It could be as simple as a free Google Analytics account, or it could be as complex as more advanced paid tools, such as web CEO that are out there. But the fact is, don't just throw stuff on the proverbial wall and to see what sticks. Have some type of a plan when you're doing your web marketing and your website work, and Joomla specifically, and you'll be much better off. And this brings me to my next point: do not edit in production. I know it's if you can help it. Now, when I say do not edit in production, I am not talking about standard content, such as articles and photos and things like this, but you find this great new extension that will instantly make the phone ring, and all you have to do is install it and you'll get sales overnight. Well, that's great and everything, but you want to make sure it doesn't break anything else in your website. Joomla is, how I like to explain it, the operating system. Think of Joomla as Microsoft Windows, and the extensions are kind of like applications that can install into Windows and allow you to have it do different things. But sometimes programs conflict with each other. And Joomla is great because you can do anything you want on it, but it's also bad because you can do anything you want on it. And the last thing you want to do is install an extension and have it cause downtime for your users, your customers, because that's not going to reflect good on your business, and it's not going to give a good user experience for your visitors. And it's going to give you unnecessary heartburn and headache when you're trying to fix stuff and realize, I installed this and all of a sudden my site went down and I uninstalled it and now I can't get in and all that. So earlier when I talked about hosting, I did talk about choosing a host as some sort of staging option. This could be as simple as getting you to a staged environment or replicating your live site to a staged environment, doing your edits on there, and then when you're happy, then you can commit them to live. Because nothing's worse than bringing out a live website which you could have avoided. We do this quite a bit at SPC. We have a staged environment and staging process that we set up, and we really try to take baby steps when we do our changes because we can't afford for our clients to have downtime, and we want to make sure that any changes we do are well tested and well thought out. That brings me to these kind of funny photos: penguin crossing next 5 kilometers, the Starbucks content's very hot sign, and hula hoop crossing. But all joking aside, just make sure that you, before you install any new extensions or you do any changes to code, you make sure you're doing it in a staged environment, not a live production site, because you want to avoid that headache if you can avoid it. Speaking of the same thing about production, I do want to talk a little bit about backups. The backups that I do want to talk about backups are important. I recommend, I like to talk about the rule of 3. If you don't have your backups in 3 places, you don't have your backups pretty much at all. What I mean by that is, I'm sure a lot of people here use online cloud storage providers such as maybe Carbonite as an example. Well, what if Carbonite went out of business tomorrow? Would you have those files somewhere else? What if your house burned down and Carbonite went out of business? Would you have those files? Same goes for your most important data in your backups. Don't rely on just your host to do the backups for you, because what if the host goes away tomorrow? What if the backups that the host have been doing have been corrupt, not working correctly? In addition, you want to take your own backups. You can do those with the tools like Akiva Backup that we mentioned previously, by Nick Demopoulos. Yes, there's more than one Opoulos in the Joomla community, but he's by far more talented than I am. But you want to test your backups. Make sure they work. Have your backups in multiple locations. And the example that I like to use is my most important data in my life are my wedding photos. Yeah, it seems kind of sappy, but it's true. So I have those wedding photos backed up to 2 different online storage providers, my local hard disk, and I also have them burned onto archival DVDs and stored in my safe deposit box at my credit union. So if those online providers went away, and one of them actually did go away about a year ago, I still have the safe deposit box and still have my local copy. Same is true for your online backups. So I'm not saying you need to run a CD over to your local financial safe deposit box every night, but you want to make sure that you're cognizant of your backups and they are there when you need them, because there's nothing worse than finding out too little too late that the backups are not what you thought they were, and your site gets hacked or something along those lines. That being said, please, I will say, I know Steve mentioned it earlier, please make sure to ask any questions
Unmuted.
that you have in the little question box over to the right. We'll make sure to be going to those in just a few minutes. But I am going to talk a little bit about security. And security is important, and there's a whole security spectrum, and there's people that have given amazing talks just on security. There's a couple of extensions that I do like to highlight. One's called JHackGuard from SiteGround. It's a free extension. It patches all the basic security holes that Joomla has. However, fair warning, it does give a link back to SiteGround, but you can turn it off in the settings. There's other good security extensions out there. And I know that there's a company out there called Security that has a new firewall extension that is a pretty good value that I'm starting to look at. But there's lots of security extensions. Find out where you fall in the spectrum. Do you just want basic security, or do you want, to pay lots of money and have more advanced security? But keep in mind, your host isn't the ones responsible for your security in most cases. And you could even be held liable for not adequately securing your website. I had a client about 5 years ago when I was doing my own freelance work before I joined SPC. They got a letter from the attorneys of Citibank because her server was being used to be a phishing site for collecting customer bank information, and she was not aware of it. And it's my little dig on WordPress. It's the only WordPress site I ever worked on was that one. So obviously it was WordPress's fault, but all kidding aside. Steve, do you have any questions by chance?
Yes, we do. First question up is, what do you suggest is the right amount of backups? Do you want 2 different locations, such as local and to Amazon S3, plus the host? What's your normal approach for minimizing risk?
Sure. What I would recommend is basically you would have 3 sets of backups like you just talked about, Steve. So you want to have a local copy, allow your host to do whatever copy they normally do. And then I really like Akiva Backup because you can send them like to Amazon S3 or to Dropbox or sources like that automatically. And what I usually recommend is daily backups for a week, and then weekly backups, and then after a month drops off, then switching to monthly backups and keeping those for a year, just to be safe. And depending on the size of your website, they may or may not be practical. But considering most websites only a few hundred megabytes, you can usually get away with that. You do need to check with your host, though, because they have their own backup retention policies that may or may not fit your needs. And if they don't fit your needs, then you need to make sure to send them to Amazon S3. A note on S3, though, is Amazon S3 is really great storage, but for your long-term backups, I recommend converting your S3 files to Amazon Glacier files. You have to do it manually, though. There's no way for a keyword to go straight to Glacier, but the cost is like 100 times less. And it's meant for archival storage, not for quick retrieval. But, you know, if it's backups that are 6 months old and you just want to keep them there, you can literally pay like a couple of pennies a month for like a gigabyte. It's really cheap.
Yeah, the backup storage and retention is getting cheaper and cheaper almost every month.
Yes.
It might not be long before you can host years and years of backups for just a few cents, the way that Amazon and Google and so on are competing.
Oh yeah, it's the new race to the bottom on cost of data storage. So.
Great. Do we have any more questions from the audience? Cool. Well, wonderful. Thank you so much, Mike.
Well, thank you. If anyone has any questions, you can hit me up on Twitter at @mpmike. And thank you so much, Steve.
Oh, thanks. And thanks to the attendees.